Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we have Shaddoll Dogmatika. Now right here we don't draw any Shaddolls or Dogmas. We just opened a bunch of hand traps, Imperm, Veiler, Call by Grave, and Shaddoll Fusion. So I mean this is the only non-thing, but it's pretty much useless going first if we don't have any Shaddolls. So he has the Flying Pegasus, he's gonna summon his Bullet Train, but I negate the Flying Pegasus. He chains Call by Grave, I chain my second effect dealer, so it does resolve. And he's going to go into Union Carry. He's going to have a special schedule, which I believe is basically a train Monster Reborn. And I Call by Grave, and then he summons Exodius the Forbidden Lord. I imperm his Union Carry because he tries to equip something. I'm not interested in knowing what he tries to equip, but we just activate our Shaddoll Fusion. We dump a Hedgehog and a Beast. We get Search for Schemata, and then we get an extra draw. We're going to be setting our Wendy. We're going to attack for some damage. And he's going to activate Urgent Schedule, which will exhaust him of his summon because he's already summoned a few monsters. We're going to go ahead and flip summon our Wendy. He's going to activate Barrage Blast. I don't know what that does. I don't intend on knowing what that does. We're going to activate Disciple of the Nadir, and he scoops knowing that I can just dump Natis and pop stuff. Can't do much under your under your window lock. I don't think I would have been able to summon Maximus anyways because I'm locked out of summoning again. I mean, I can just search Ecclesia, get a Fleur de Lis, and then attack for a decent amount of damage. And we have a draw too on our next turn. So that was a relatively easy first game. Let's go to our next one now. For next duel, we're up against Melfi's. They have a pretty decent hand. They have Puppy, Veraphon, they have Melfi Tag to revive something, they have Playhouse. But basically, we just fuse into a construct, we dump a Beast, we get draw. We drew the Disciple of Nadir, so we get to search for an Ecclesia, because why not? We get to search and dump a Rook, because I don't really want to dump anything in my hand right now. We're going to get to search for a Fleur de Lis off our Ecclesia because we already have Punishment. We're going to go ahead use Dogmata Maximus to get something. I don't know why I dumped an Omega. I'm honestly not sure, but I guess I'm kind of retarded, so that happens. We're going to go into a Winda and during the end of his main phase, and during the end phase he's going to summon Puppy. We're going to activate Punishment, which will dump a Natis, and we pop his back row, which is an Imperm. I'm going to go ahead summon Fleur de Lis. We're going to activate Maximus Dragma, which dumps 2 again, and we pop his second back row, and then Omega will just shuffle everything back. Now, I made a fatal mistake here. If I bet a lot of you don't know this, but Rook has a second part of its sentence after saying fusion something, but it cannot attack directly. I did not know this. I thought I could just attack directly with my Winda. I probably should have just attacked first with my Winda, and then I could have attacked with everything I have for an easy game. But no, I don't read my cards, so that happens. We're going to set our Shaddoll Incarnation, because why not? And he kind of scoops because he doesn't have anything. If he summons Melfi Tag, then he can't really summon Melfi. I mean, he can normal summon it, but then he can't XC summon anything. And Melfi's quite literally cannot play through your window lock. For our last replay, we are up against Trap Tricks. Now, we are going to be going first again, so let's see how we do. We start off with the Disciple of the Nadir. We get to dump Apollyon, and we get a search for Rook, dump Schemata. Schemata will dump our Wendy. Wendy will summon Shaddoll Beast. Now we can go ahead and summon our Maximus, and then we'll use its effect to get it dump the Titaniclad and our Construct. We're going to go ahead and summon Ecclesia during the end phase with our Titaniclad, meaning we get search for our Fleur de Lis. I feel... Nah, I did it correctly. So we're going to go ahead and use Rook, summon Winda. I should have summoned Winda in the extra monster zone because now I don't have zone for my Fleur de Lis. But that's a misplay on my part, don't do it. So he sets a Shade Brigandine and a Lost Wind. We're going to flip summon our Shaddoll Beast, letting us get draw 2. We're going to summon Schemata. He's going to chain Lost Wind. But his Sarah dies anyways. I did another misplay. I used Maximus, which locks me into my extra deck, instead of going for something like an Access Code OTK or a Boral Sword OTK. Like, I could go into something like Cross Sheep and then fusion something again with Schism. Really not sure why I am like this, but misplays happen, you know, misplays. I'm the lord of misplays, you know that from me. So we're going to go ahead, attack for some more damage. and we're gonna set both our Call by Graves and pass. Once again, I should have just well, I was locked out my extra deck with Maximus anyways. He's going to summon this Dianea, which I believe is like a Monster Rebornish thing. We're going to Call by Grave its opponent. We're going to go into Rook to summon another Winda in the extra monster zone this time because I want the zone for my Fleur-de-Lis, and he scoops. Once again, can't do much at this point. Even if he tries to like set the Shade Brigandine, I have Maximus next turn to pop everything. On top of that, I can easily go for the access code ODK because I'm smarter now. So let's go. And those are some duels. Just shows the deck is very consistent. We do run a nice couple of hand traps, 9 I believe. On top of that, during like turn 3 or something, we can go into an access code ODK because this deck does play its fair share of spells. So let's go to the deck profile now. So here's the deck. We'll start with our Shaddoll cards. We have 2 copies of Beast. We do run 2 because the draws are very nice. 1 copy of Dragon just for spell trap removal. 3 copies of Schemata just acts as another copy of any Shaddoll if you're using it as fusion material. And it is a pretty nice card to set too because it does pop a monster, basically a man-eater bug. 3 copies of Wendy. This is also a very good card to draw because then you can just set it, and then if your opponent just attacks into it, you can use its effect to summon a beast from deck. And then if your opponent attacks into the beast, then you get to draw 2 and discard 1, which is very nice. Just increases consistency even more. 2 copies of Hedgehog. Just searches anything if you use it as fusion material, and searches your fusion card if you set it. Usually you won't set it, usually you'll just use it as fusion material, but 2 Hedgehog is definitely warranted. 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion. We don't run El Shaddoll Fusion because we don't run enough Shaddolls to really capacitate that. But Shaddoll Fusion just fusion summons things from the deck, which is very nice. So 3 of that for sure. 2 copies of Shaddoll Incarnation and 1 copy of Shaddoll Schism. This is basically Monster Reborn, so if you have something like an Apocalypse in your graveyard, you can just revive it, and then it's basically a walking impermanent where you can just negate the effects of any face-up card. Not even monster, any face-up card, which is very nice. And 1 copy of Rook. You only need to run 1 copy because you can search it off Apocalypse. Most of the time you just do that. Shaddoll Rook is, you just need to run 1, and it can also act as a potential disruption if your opponent does have a dark monster on their field. So that's nice. 1 copy of Fleur-de-Lis. We're going on to our Dragma cards now. Fleur-de-Lis is basically, once again, a walking impermanence, just like Apocalypse. On top of that, it really helps you OTK as it makes everything gain 500 attack when a Dogmatika declares an attack, which is very nice. 1 copy of Maximus Dragma. He has a relatively easy summoning condition. On top of that, you can send 2 monsters from your extra deck to the graveyard. So you can send Nittis and Omega and repeatedly recycle them every turn. So that is nice. 1 copy of him for sure. 3 copies of Ecclesia. Deck doesn't necessarily use its normal summon that much unless you have drawn something like Schemata only. But Ecclesia is just a very solid card to have. Basically a Stratos for the deck, just searching anything. You can search Punishment, which is something you can do. You can search Fleur-de-Lis. There are lots of things you can do with it. 3 copies of Disciple of Nadir. It's basically Rhoda for your Dogmatikas. It can dump your something like an Apocalypse in order to get a search for Maximus, and then Apocalypse will get you a search, and then you can discard anything. And if you have something like Shaddoll Beast in your hand, you can discard that, and then you get an extra draw on top of that. So Disciple of Nadir is probably one of the best cards in this deck. 1 copy of Dogmatika Punishment. This usually you get 2 pops off it. 1 you pop a monster by dumping Nittis, and then Nittis' effect will pop another card, which is very nice. 2 copies of Avarice. Recycling cards in this deck is moderately important because sometimes you do need to just recycle some cards. So we run 2 copies of Avarice for that. 3 copies of Call by Grave for hand traps because you really don't want your this Nadir servant to get ashed. For our hand traps, you run 9 of them. 2 copies of Ash Blossom, 3 copies of Veiler, and 2 copies of Imperm. These are kind of just generic. The main reason for 3 Veiler over any other hand trap is because we can go into access code ODK from here. We do run a fair share of spells. We run Nadir, which is, you want to resolve this almost all the time. You run Shaddoll Fusion and Call by Grave with your Avarice, which does occur sometimes. So Veiler for the access code ODK. 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. Also, one more thing, Celine can revive your Shaddolls. because most of them are your spellcasters, except Wendy, unfortunately. But yep, Ash is just generically good, does stop a lot of cards. Veiler just stops monsters and it's used for ODK, and Imperm is probably the best one, as it's probably the best hand trap versus Zexal in my opinion. But you don't see Zexal that much nowadays. For extra deck, we run 2 copies of El Shaddoll Construct. El Shaddoll, the main reason why we run 2 is sometimes you summon it, and other times you just dump it off Maximus as fusion material for your Shaddoll Rook. So those are the 2 utilities for Shaddoll Construct, which is why we run 2. On top of that, it basically destroys any monster at the start of the damage step, so it doesn't matter what it is. If it's like something like a 5-headed dragon, you can still just destroy it. 2 copies of our Titanic Lad. During the end phase, you almost never hard summon it, but during the end phase, if it's in the graveyard, you can summon or add to your hand a Dogmatika monster from your deck. So you can like search a Fleur-de-Lis during the end phase, or you can summon Ecclesia then search Fleur-de-Lis. Doesn't make too much of a difference. 1 copy of El Shaddoll Apocalypse. Usually you will send this to a graveyard of something like a Nadir Servant or your Maximus, where basically you just get searched for a Rook and then you dump something. So if you dump something like a Shaddoll, you get a floating effect on top of that, which is very nice. 2 copies of Winda. You do run 2 in case your first one does get stopped somehow, so we run 2. And 2 copies of Natis. Usually the first copy of Natis, you'll usually dump it off your punishment, and your second copy of Natis will be looped around with your Cyframe Lord Omega, which is very nice. We run 1 copy of Boral Sword for OTKs, 1 copy of Access Code for demolishing boards, 1 copy of Celine and Hulk. All 3 of these are just for OTKs. On top of that, Celine can revive your Shaddolls too, so you're not too worried about your just reviving Veiler specifically. 1 copy of Crystron Halki Fibrax, the unfair card. If you get one of your hand traps, you run 6 of them, 6 tuner hand traps specifically, Ash Blossom and your effect Veiler. You can go into Link Climb into Access Code. And for the last one, we have Cross Sheep. Cross Sheep is just super good in this deck, just being able to recur materials, and you can just fusion summon a lot of things with Rook and Shaddoll Fusion. It's a very nice card to have. So that's kind of the deck. I hope you enjoyed it. I think that this is kind of competitive, just because of its sheer consistency and control over the game, and I think it can probably maybe top a regional here and there. So that's the deck. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell, as it really does help the channel, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.